Welcome to Educational Moments. This is a program designed to bring to you, the viewing audience, timely topics in education in a way that is succinct and easy to understand. I'm very pleased to say that as my guest today, we have William Cass, who's a representative of the Wakefield and Lynnfield area. And Bill, we're very pleased that you're here today, and I know you're very busy, and I call you often, and you always respond, and I appreciate that.
It's a pleasure to be back at Wakefield High School.
Congratulations on new term, new 2-year term for you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
I think the fact that you were unopposed says a lot about the confidence that we have in you.
Thank you.
I certainly do, so thanks very much for coming. Topic today, Bill, I'd like you to address, if you would be educational reform. I keep bringing it up and writing about it and talking to people about it. I'm mostly concerned about, is it really going to happen? Is everything we read about in the paper on educational reform going to materialize, or is this going to be another wait till next year, like the Red Sox?
No, I'm very confident that we are going to have an educational reform package in place. I believe that we'll have it potentially in place, and I'm being a little bit cautious, but I think we'll have something in place before the first of the year. I know that there are many skeptics abound, both in Wakefield, Lynnfield, and in the State House that just don't see that happening. But there is an urgency. There is, without question, a need to reform many aspects of both our funding and the way we carry out the education of our children. And you can see that there's a lot of momentum building up for this within the walls of the building. Now, people are skeptical, the public, about reform packages. The last 2 reform packages that come to my mind were the last education reform package we did, and auto insurance reform, and everybody's rates went up when we did that. So there's part of it. Of course, and it should be. But there's a number of factors that are contributing to my belief that we're going to move on this quickly. First of all, as you are aware, but probably many people are not aware, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts primarily funds their education system through the use of the property tax. This is something that has been deemed by state Supreme Courts and other states as being unconstitutional. There is currently a lawsuit that has been ongoing from the Dukakis administration now to the Weld administration that is challenging that fact. And we realize that this is going to come to a head sooner than we probably would like to believe. And what that means is that students in Wakefield, because the values of the homes in this community are priced more than communities such as Holyoke, North Adams, and to even a greater degree, towns like Lincoln and Concord, they have either more or less monies to educate their children based on where they reside. Now, you can't, as a child, help where you're born. It's just, there's a lot of contributing factors. And the belief is, and I agree with this belief, is that the child in Holyoke, if they can only raise $2,000 per year per child, should not be receiving an unequal education with someone in Wakefield, Lincoln, or Concord for that matter. Now, with that all in mind, the belief is that at least most of the talk has been around creating what we would call a foundation formula. And that's saying that we would establish a base amount of money that we have to spend on each child in every school system across Massachusetts. Now, the figures range from $5,000 that the Weld administration has put forth to $5,500, which has been bandied about the legislature. And the MTA, as recently as last week, has suggested that we should spend $6,000 per child. Whatever those figures are, for this moment, are irrelevant. We've all established that we have to come up with a base figure. Now, if you're in Holyoke and they're only spending $2,000 per child on the education, they're going to have to come up. Now, they can't come up through the use of the property tax because of Proposition 2.5. They're going to have to get their money from the state, and that's where we're talking about in the papers we've read about the amount of money that's being committed to the local municipalities. Here in Wakefield, we received $330,000 this past year, and you sent me a letter as to where it's going, and it's going to wonderful, much-needed programs. Communities such as Holyoke and North Adams, need even greater money. And you're going to see a bulk of the education reform monies go towards those communities. We have no choice, because if we don't do that, the current education laws as we know them will be struck down. And the fear is that we'll have in place what's happened in other states, where instead of raising the floor, such as raising a Holyoke up to be equal with a Wakefield, we're going to lower the ceiling. So if Wakefield decides that we want to spend more on education, in some other states they're not allowed to do that. So a Lincoln that's spending $11,000 per child per year will be prohibited from spending any more than that foundation formula, and that's happening in certain states. So if you're a community that wants to concentrate on education, you'll be prohibited, unless, in my opinion, unless we move more quickly.
I really haven't heard that aspect of the law.
Yeah, but it's something that we're very concerned about.
That's something different. Tell me, isn't it unusual that from the Education Committee, you had co-chairman, you had Senator Birmingham and Representative Roosevelt, that they would come out with different reports?
No, it's actually very common, but
it is common.
It's very common. What is unusual from the public's perspective is this is such a highly charged subject, because it's involving children, that we're seeing the political process that normally is unknown to the general public. It's now being elevated to center stage. This is a very common practice. It's probably this is a little bit of goes a little bit further than something that I've seen in my committee work. But it's because the amount of attention and focus by the media has maybe pushed it to a new level where there is such a division. But it's what we call in the legislature posturing, and as I've tried to explain to many people, there is less of a rivalry between parties in the legislature than there is between branches. The House and the Senate are traditionally a different group of people, and we act differently, and there is a bit of institutional curiosity, jealousy that results as a result of that. But I don't think it is unhealthy that they have two separate bills. I would have liked to have seen them come out strongly together, but I don't think it's going to hurt the process in the long run, because each side will fight for those things that are most important to them, and I think the things that are most important that I hear from each group are things that will be very important for kids. And so I think it's going to end up being positive. We're going to see a lot of, there's going to be a lot of stories that education reform is stalled, it's going forward, it's stalled.
Yes.
And it's just big.
Coming out now.
It's people, of course, it's people speculating. It's
Okay.
all speculation. But some of the things that some of the reasoning behind why I think it will move forward quicker is there is much talk that Senator Birmingham is going to be the next Senate Chairman of Ways and Means.
Okay.
That is an enormous task that Senator Patricia McGovern has currently and will soon be retiring in January. That person has to immediately immerse themselves in the FY94 budget process and has no time to do anything but that, especially a new person coming into that role. So I think there's going to be that sense of urgency on the Senate side to get something done. I know the House is planning on, before the first of the year, introducing the bill to the House members to be voted on. So I'm confident we're going to see the bill come out of the House in the next month, and I think we'll see some action on it. The other thing is well, and this is where I show that I haven't been in the legislature long enough. I assumed that we would close shop between November and January, because the Senate would have a desire to bring in all of the new Senate Democrats, because the Democrats, as you know, in January will have an overwhelming margin in both branches, and then they could put forth whatever bill they wanted to. But as I'm seeing now, it's the exact opposite is happening. The governor knows that he has to deal now with the Democratic legislature in a way that he won't be able to deal in January. And the Democratic legislature understands that as well. And the good thing is you're going to see, instead of partisanship and a lot of negativity, both sides are going to have to work together, because the Democrats are going to want to get certain things through that the governor might normally veto, and vice versa. So I think it's going to be a very solid process.
Well, you sound like a seasoned representative to me.
Well, and I'm very optimistic about this, and
Good.
and the only reason I base it only on the fact that I have never seen a more open process. Now, I know many of the general public still don't understand completely all of the aspects of the bill. Neither do I, but I know that they have made an
Okay.
effort.
We've discussed the funding aspect. Now, there's a governance aspect that is somewhat controversial, at least where I sit. And, was at the Hyannis Conference recently
Right.
with school committees and superintendents, and the issue of governance and the change of governance,
Right.
especially at the school committee level, was discussed.
Sure.
What have you been hearing about the pros and cons of change at that level?
Well, there has been little debate within the walls of the legislature about the proposed role of school committees. I think there's a belief that no matter what happens in this bill, the roles of school committees will be somewhat curtailed, will be reduced. There's a strong feeling, I think among both chairmen, to move towards this school-based management that we've been talking about and empowering the principals and the superintendents, the education professionals, to be able to make decisions that are believed to be in the best interest in the children based on their professional ability. And the school committee will be reduced somewhat to more of a policy making, which a criticism statewide. I hear it. I mean, we talk with colleagues from other communities across the state, and there's a belief in their communities that the school committee is involved with too much of the day-to-day operation and should be relying solely on the policy aspect of educating the children. And I don't disagree with that.
So the focus will be redirected for school committee, because policy making
Yes.
is very important.
It's extremely important.
Yeah.
But I
And
think,
the school committees can still hold the professionals accountable under this,
oh, absolutely. Now,
maybe even more so.
I think so. Now the question is, and I can't answer right now how that role is going to look and how it's going to be shaped. Will the school committee's biggest fear now is that they will have little or no power, which will mean that parents will have little or no power. And I think their fears are genuine and should be addressed. But I think when things come out in the final analysis, they may lose some power, but I don't think enough that will take away the parents' concerns, the parents' input into the school process. That's very, very important. Everything I've been reading has been based on parental input. They want a lot of involvement from the parents in this.
Well, as I read all of the bills, and they're quite long and complex.
Yes, they
but
are.
they all focus on the parents at the schools serving on councils that make
Yes.
decisions at the school level.
Right.
And the parents and the principals and the teachers are going to require training.
Oh, yes.
Certainly a lot of training, and I see the training aspect in all the bills.
And with training comes money. It's a mandate from the state.
Yes.
And as you know, as a result of
Very
Proposition
important.
2.5, we cannot mandate things to cities and towns without providing monies. And we're going to provide the money. There is a firm commitment by the governor and by the legislature to increase funding for our schools dramatically over the next 5 years. And prior to my getting to the State House, I know that we had the dubious distinction of being the only state in the country to cut funding for education 4 consecutive years. And if you think about when people think of Massachusetts, it is one of the first 2 or 3 things that they think of is our education system. We have the finest university system in the country. There's no reason that we shouldn't have the finest elementary and secondary education system in the country.
That's really a good thought. Bill, the issue of the state pay raises, that's come up, I'm sure,
Yeah.
this week, to you especially, but the papers and some of the columns are saying because of the pay raises, we're not going to have educational reform. Could you comment
No,
on that?
it's untrue, and it's unfair, it's disingenuous, and I'm just feeling safe now enough to take off the flak jacket. It's been a solid week of some compliment, but much criticism about our decision to fund the state employee pay raises. I don't want to debate the merits of the issue. I think it was the right thing to do. I think that when people there are many people out of work that don't agree with that, but there are, state employees did bargain in good faith to have a pay increase. The pay increase that we've granted them is nothing that they are entitled to under the collective bargaining process, because in full rights they wanted their retroactive pay, which we're not going to fund. And the money is there, and the money will in no way lead to, as I read in the Herald, a $900 million deficit. It's not going to happen. There is a commitment to fund these raises, and there is a commitment to keep local aid at the same level, and there's a commitment to increase funding for education next year again. And that commitment is not going to be shaken. And what you're seeing now, and as I've cautioned people, is you're seeing posturing. It's what happens the week after a controversial bill happens. Everyone predicts these dire consequences. And believe me, I'm not taking the fiscal stability of this Commonwealth lightly.
Right.
I have been involved with it. This was a very bipartisan vote in favor of the pay raises. There were only 2 members of the Senate that voted against it, and there were only 18 members of the House. Now, that's Republican and Democratic alike. I can't believe that many people, both Republican and Democrat, could be that irresponsible. We know that we have currently a $500 million surplus. The money is there to pay for it in this fiscal year. It's going to be a little tougher to pay for it next year, but we think, frankly, we can do it. I'm very positive about that.
Well, Representative Cass, I'd like to thank you very much for coming. And,
Thank you, my pleasure.
And talking to us on Educational Moments. I think you've probably giving us more information than we could get from the newspapers. This is November 24th, and you've, I think, given me more information than I have been able to get from the press or even from others on Beacon Hill. So,
Well,
I appreciate it.
You're very welcome. I want to extend the same opportunity, and your calls are very welcome to my office. I don't want you to think that...
Sure. No. I'll keep calling you.
No, it's quite all right. Many parents do. This is one of the biggest areas of concern that I'm seeing today. But as I explain to anyone that calls my office, I have copies of the bills. I will be more than happy to send out summaries to anyone that would like them. If you want a copy of the full text, which I wouldn't imagine why anyone would want one, you can come to my office. I'll let you copy it. It's very long, and I can't afford to copy them all, but you can take it, and as long as you return it, use our office as a resource.
Thank you again, Representative Cass, for being on the program. Thank you, viewers, for watching Educational Moments. If you do have a suggestion for programs you'd like to see on Educational Moments, please drop a line to the Superintendent's office in Wakefield at 525 Main Street. Thank you for watching this program, and we'll see you on the next Educational Moments program.